That night, I came home, and my wife was in the garage. Not because she wanted to be there, but because my son had locked her inside. When I opened the door, the heat poured out like from a furnace. The air was thick with the smell of metal, sweat, and dry feces mixed with the stench of urine. The whole room reeked of despair. On the concrete floor, a plastic chair lay tipped over, an empty water bottle rolled by her feet. He said he only wanted to let Mom rest for a few days so Dad could calm down. But there are some few days that are enough to make a person stop believing in the word family. I understood then, some children don't need violence to hurt their parents. They just have to treat compassion like something they can lock away whenever they wish. If you've ever had someone in your own family cross that line, leave a single dot in the comments so I know you too have smelled the scent of betrayal inside your own home. And if you believe that silence is not surrender, but the beginning of justice, hit subscribe, because I will keep telling stories where every door once locked by the wrong person will one day be opened by the truth. I had just returned from Fort Collins, where my volunteer engineering team and I repaired an old steel bridge over the Cache la Poudre River. Late summer Colorado smelled of pine resin and cold, dry wind. When my truck turned onto the sloping road leading back to Boulder, the sunset streaked across the Rocky Mountains like a red cut. As soon as I pulled into the driveway, I froze. My son Logan's white Tesla Model Y was parked squarely in front of the garage, blocking the way, the kind of parking I hated most. He knew that, but he did it anyway. I stepped inside, took off my gloves, and immediately heard a shrill female voice echoing from the living room. "Dad! Perfect timing! We were just talking about an opportunity. You'll definitely want to join." Natalie Rhodes Ward, my daughter-in-law, stood in the center of the room like a commercial host, wearing a tight white dress and a teardrop-shaped pink pendant catching the light. On the dining table lay brochures, papers, and a PowerPoint slide reading, "Alpine Vital Collective, Wellness by Nature." Dana, my wife, sat at the corner of the table, her hand resting on a teacup she didn't drink, her eyes begging me not to get angry. I pulled out a chair, keeping my tone even. "Go on, Natalie. What opportunity?" She smiled confidently and opened her laptop. "This project is entering the seed funding stage. We need $120,000 to expand to Denver. You just have to invest and get a 5% share." I said nothing. I stared at her pastel-colored charts, fake growth curves, phrases like passive income, and early retirement. "It's a natural wellness distribution model," she continued. "Each member contributes $3,000 to receive products and the right to build their own network. Recruitment commissions go up to 70%. I closed my pen, my voice dropping lower. 70%? From recruiting new people? Yes, Dad, that's how it scales fastest. Not selling products, but selling hope. You call that growth?" Natalie pressed her lips, looking at me like I was some outdated relic who didn't understand the times. "You only believe in machines and spreadsheets. We believe in people, in clean energy, in community." I gave a faint smile. From my old leather briefcase, I took out a stack of papers neatly clipped together. "Here's the record of the last 8 years. 20,000 for your first apartment in Denver, 45,000 for the wellness studio you rented then abandoned, 38,000 to pay off credit cards, and 105,000 for all the emergencies. That's a total of $198,000. Your parents have invested in you enough." I set the papers on the table, right beside the pink brochure. The room froze. Logan, my son, sat back on the sofa, his eyes distant. I looked at him. "What do you think, son? You studied engineering. You know what happens when a system loses stability." He avoided my gaze, his voice unsteady. "I just wanted to try once, Dad. Natalie believes in this." "And you? Do you believe?" He stayed silent. Natalie jumped in. "Don't pressure him. Not everyone wants to live like you, counting numbers, fearing risk. We're trying to step out of the old generation's shadow. I looked straight at her. The shadow of the old generation has been shielding you from the sun for years. Don't forget who paid the electric bills for that wellness studio. Natalie's face flushed red. She slapped the papers off the table, the metal clip clattering to the floor. You understand nothing. You always want control. Always think money is the only way to love. I stood up calmly. Money isn't the way to love. But without morality, every kind of love becomes a bad investment. At that moment, I saw something strange in her eyes, a cold, deep hatred, like someone memorizing a debt. Logan rose, his voice weak. "That's enough, Nat. Let's go." But Natalie shouted, "You'll regret standing between us and our future." She spun around, yanked Logan's arm, and the wooden door slammed shut as raindrops began to fall outside the porch. Only the smell of cold tea, fresh ink, and the yellow light glinting on the words "Wellness by Nature" remained on the pink brochure. I picked it up, studying the picture of a woman raising her arms to the sun, and thought, even light can blind people. I folded the paper and slipped it into my coat pocket. Dana looked at me, worried. "What do you think they'll do next?" I answered slowly, my voice rough. "If someone's willing to trade morality for money, sooner or later they'll trade their own family for a chance." Outside, the cold wind lashed against the window frame. I didn't yet know that just 3 days later, that garage door would close again. And this time, it wouldn't be because of the wind. After Natalie left, the house fell into a silence so thick I could hear the wall clock ticking. The smell of cold ginger tea mixed with the chemical smell of ink from the stack of brochures still on the table. Dana gently put her hand on my shoulder, voice as soft as a breath. "Don't hold it in. They're just being reckless." I didn't answer. I looked at the paper printed with the words "Wellness by Nature" and thought, nothing is as natural as human greed. I stood, gathered the flyers one by one, stacking them like an error report. Each leaflet was a lie dressed up nicely. Dana looked at me, eyes sad. "Are you still angry with Logan?" "I'm not angry," I answered. "I'm just recalculating the error in fatherhood." She sat down beside me and took my hand. "He's our child, Philip. Money can be lost, but a child cannot." I looked her straight in the eye, voice low but as hard as steel. "An accountant can accept the small errors, but cannot allow the ledger to be falsified. As for you, you don't even know whether your child is writing real numbers or fake ones anymore." That night, after Dana fell asleep, I opened the drawer and took out the black-covered notebook, the book I called The Ledger of Life. In 40 years as an engineer, I recorded every expense, every contract, every milestone. In the middle pages, there was an old clipped paper, a balance exercise Logan did when he was 15. I remember that night clearly. He sat beside me in the workshop as the smell of iron and machine oil rose. I asked, "Do you know the difference between numbers and words?" "Words can make people laugh," he answered, eyes bright. "But numbers don't." I laughed. "Right. Numbers don't pretend. Data doesn't lie." Back then, Logan wanted to study engineering like me. He asked if it was because I love machines. I said, "No, I don't love machines. I love precision." Now, remembering it, that sentence sounds like a curse. Our house sits in the Boulder suburbs, a 2-story wooden home on a pine-covered hillside where every morning the scent of resin and mountain wind blows across the porch. The 3-door garage sits to the right, so wide and clean it could reflect a person's silhouette. I had installed the LiftMaster one-touch electric lock system myself, with an auto lock when the door goes down and an electronic code log. I chose it because I like the feeling of security and order. I never imagined that one day that very perfection would become a trap. That night, Dana brought the blanket out to wash and said she would sleep early. I nodded. I had to go to Denver for 2 days to attend the Retired Engineers Highway Association seminar, a trip that was both habit and a way to keep from feeling useless after retirement Before I left, I told Dana, "Lock the doors carefully. Lately, animals have been getting into yards around here." "You worry too much," she smiled. "You've always worried." "Worry is your trade," I smiled faintly. I did not know that the last time I would see her smile would be the smile before a crime was planned. The next afternoon, when I was already in Denver, Dana called. Her voice was cheerful. "Don't worry, I'm fine. This morning was beautiful. I'm going to replant the lavender by the fence. I might come back earlier than expected, maybe tomorrow night." "That would be great. I'll make that carrot soup you like." The call ended with a joke. "Remember to turn off the living room light when you leave." That was the last time I heard her peaceful voice. He slipped the camera edge to briefly cover the lens, and then ran his hand over the garage lock, like someone listening to the rhythm of a machine. His actions were not the wild work of a vandal, but deliberate preparation. Cover the camera, check the auto-lock mechanism, observe the window positions, sight lines, and small vulnerabilities. Only someone used to the work would know how to exploit. The next morning, everything looked normal. Dana was still watering the porch plants, closing the windows, and chatting cheerfully with Philip on the phone. No one knew that during the night a child had come to prepare. Not to break the scene, but to turn the scene into an invisible partition. When the camera recorded only 40 seconds and then went dark, that was not an accident, but the consequence of someone who had come to prepare for the terrible thing to happen. No noise, no big traces, only an intention sewn into silence, waiting for the moment it would begin. That Wednesday afternoon, the wind from the Flatirons blew hard, carrying the scent of earth and pine resin after a brief rain. Dana was hanging towels by the back door when she heard a car stop in the driveway. It wasn't a delivery van or a neighbor's car. It was Logan's silver SUV. She looked up, frowning slightly. Since the night Natalie stormed out, he hadn't come back once. The car door opened. Logan stepped out, holding a baseball cap, his voice forced to sound calm. "Mom, I just want to talk for a bit." His tone was soft, but there was something in his eyes that made Dana uneasy, a kind of misplaced determination. "Your father's in Denver. If it's something important, wait till he gets back." "No need. This is just between you and me." He followed her as she walked into the kitchen. The house smelled of half-cooked carrot soup. Dana wiped her hands with a towel and turned. "Have you eaten yet?" "Not yet," he said quietly. "But I need you to understand. We're really stuck. If Dad just signs the transfer, everything will be fine." Dana sighed. "Logan, I know you're stressed, but your father has to decide that himself. I can't get involved." He stepped closer, his hands trembling but his eyes cold. "If you love me, you'll help. Just call Dad. Tell him to sign. When it's done, you'll go outside." "Outside? What do you mean?" "I just want you to have some quiet to think." "Logan, what are you talking about?" Before she could react, he shoved her shoulder hard. Dana stumbled into the garage door behind the kitchen. The fall made her elbow slam against the steel counter, pain shooting up her arm. "What are you doing?" she shouted. "Stay there," Logan said tensely. "It's only temporary." He pressed the button to open the garage door. The metal door slid up, revealing the dark space and the smell of cold paint. Dana started to step forward, but Logan took her phone from her pocket, switched it off, and slipped it into his own. "Give that back to me." "No. When Dad signs, you'll come out." She froze. "Have you lost your mind? This is your father's house." "It used to be mine, too," he said, his voice cracking. "If he won't help, everything we've built will collapse. Natalie's lost everything. You don't understand. That woman put you up to this." "Don't talk about my wife like that," Logan shouted, pushing her farther into the garage. She tripped over a toolbox, nearly falling. Their garage had a LiftMaster one-touch system, automatic closure and self-lock within 10 seconds once the door lowered. Philip had enabled tool protection mode, which removed the inner handle to prevent kids from tampering with saws and chemicals. Dana looked around, panic rising. "Logan, listen to me. Your father taught you one thing. Numbers don't lie. Only people do. Don't be the one who lies. He looked at her, eyes shaking, then repeated words that froze her blood. I'm protecting my wife, just like Dad once protected you. No, Logan, this isn't protection. This is a crime. He didn't answer. Logan stepped back, holding the remote. The garage door began to descend. Logan, my son, open this door right now. I'm sorry. The door slid shut. The last sliver of light vanished, and the metal sealed with a dry click. In that moment, darkness swallowed everything. No phone signal, no way out, no water. The tool protection mode was now engaged. From the porch camera, a green light blinked twice and went still. Then came a small sound, the electronic lock snapping into place. And with that, 72 hours of hell began. The first morning, sunlight poured over Boulder's Pine Hills, the heat so fierce it made the asphalt shimmer. 97 degrees Fahrenheit, inside the garage. The air was thick with the stench of paint, metal, and melting plastic. Every breath felt like swallowing fire. Dana struck the door with the hammer handle. Bang, bang, bang! The dry sound echoed and then died in the sealed space. The silver paint scratched, leaving a long scar like a blade mark, a small trace that would later become evidence. She screamed until her voice broke. Can anyone hear me? No one answered. She searched everywhere, only finding the small potted plants Philip had been testing near the window. Their water was murky, mixed with fertilizer. Dana hesitated, then drank. The liquid tasted metallic, but she had no choice. Sweat drenched her shirt, then dried, leaving white salt lines on her wrists. For the first time in her life, Dana understood absolute silence. No birds, no cars, only her heartbeat pounding against steel walls. By noon, she felt the urge to relieve herself. Instinct drove her to a dark corner behind the tool chest, pulling a rag to cover herself. Shame made her tremble, but she still did it. When pushed to the edge, survival and humiliation become the same thing. As dusk fell, she heard a faint sound outside. The neighbor's cat, Ginger, mewing weakly. She whispered, Ginger, come here. But the cat only looked through the sliver of light and walked away. That sight cut like a knife. The world still moved, but she had been forgotten. That first night, Dana leaned against the wall, her mouth dry, throat raw. The metal creaked with expansion. Tick, tick, like a clock counting down. She whispered to herself, Philip, if only you were here. The second day, heat rose from the concrete floor like an invisible flame. The smells of paint, sweat, and despair blended. Sunlight slipped through the crack, slicing her face like a knife. She began to hallucinate. Philip appeared at the door, his face blurred in the glare. You there, Dana? Open the door. She sprang up, pounding the door, screaming until her throat tore. I'm here, Philip. But only the wind answered. She wept silently, and the shifting light on the wall moved like the hands of a clock. She no longer knew how long she'd been crying. When the second night came, the garage cooled, but her body still burned. She dreamed of Logan as a boy, sitting on the floor of their old house, holding a sheet of accounting homework. Numbers don't lie, do they, Mom? She nodded. But the child blurred away, replaced by a grown man pressing an electric lock button. His eyes no longer trembled. The third day, Dana had no strength left. Each breath was a blade. She dragged herself toward the high window where sunlight streamed in, a blinding strip of gold. She pulled a chair, trembling, climbing to look outside, toward the blue sky where maybe, somewhere, Philip was already on his way home. Philip, help me. Her voice faded. Her hand touched the burning edge of glass. Slipped. She fell, her head striking the corner of the workbench. The last sound was the crash of a watering can spilling across the wood floor. Salted water mixed with blood reflecting sunlight like liquid gold. The porch camera captured only that light, nothing more. The garage went still. The strip of sunlight stretched across the wood and disappeared as the sun sank behind the pines. 3 days. 36 degrees Celsius. A human locked inside summer, between survival and betrayal. She did not know that when Philip returned, the scratched metal mark on the door and the dried salt stains would become the last words she ever wrote, not with her hands, but with the endurance of her soul. Sunday, 10:34 in the morning, the sun scorched the pine hills behind our house. I came home a day earlier than planned. The Denver conference had ended abruptly due to a local power outage. The road back to Boulder was empty, the highway thermoboards flashing 97 degrees Fahrenheit. I just wanted to get home, have dinner with Dana, and tell her how the old engineers argued about bridge steel like in the old days. When I turned into our driveway, the first thing I saw was 3 local newspapers stacked on the steps, damp with dew. Dana had never let papers pile up for even 2 days, let alone 3. A cold feeling ran down my spine. I opened the door and called out, "Dana, I'm home!" No reply. On the dining table sat a bowl of carrot soup, the one she said she'd make for me, its surface dried and cracked like parched earth. My heartbeat quickened as I hurried down the hallway. The door connecting to the garage was half closed, a streak of white light slipping through. I touched the handle. It was burning hot. "Dana!" No sound. Only a wave of suffocating heat rushed out as I opened the door. It felt like opening the lid of a furnace. The air was dense, filled with the stench of burned metal, melted plastic, and a sharp, acrid odor of a body trapped too long, the mix of sweat, dried urine, and human despair. I froze. My throat tightened. My vision blurred from the heat. On the concrete floor, her bare feet lay tilted, just 2 meters from the door. My whole body went numb. I ran to her, hands trembling, entering the security code to fully lift the garage door for air. I mistyped once. My sweaty fingers slipped on the keypad. The alarm beeped sharply, then the mechanism groaned. "Cree!" Like a beast waking up. I tried again. This time it worked. The door opened wide, blinding white light flooding in. Dana lay on the floor, her skin pale, lips cracked. She was still breathing, faint, shallow. I knelt, lifting her head, my voice breaking. "Dana, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, trembling, struggling to speak. The sound was so faint, I had to lean close to catch it. Logan did this. 4 words, each one a blade in my mind. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher's voice came through, steady, professional. 911, please describe the emergency. Garage, person unconscious, heat, can't breathe. Send ambulance now. 11 minutes later, the Boulder EMS arrived. 2 paramedics, Alvarez and Santos, rushed in with oxygen, tanks, kits, and a stretcher. Alvarez spoke quickly, focused. Blood pressure low, severe dehydration, starting IV now. I stood beside him, hearing the monitor's beeping rhythm. Alvarez turned to me. Your family? Yes. I'll need your consent for treatment. She's lucky. Just a few more hours and... He stopped, not finishing the sentence. As they wheeled the stretcher out, I asked, Do you need to photograph the scene for your report? No, sir. EMS only handles medical. Photos and evidence are police work if you report it. I nodded, my head spinning. I watched as they lifted the stretcher into the ambulance. The door slammed shut, echoing through the hill. I turned back to the garage. On the floor was the water bottle Alvarez had handed me earlier. I picked it up. The water was still cool, but my hands trembled so violently that drops fell onto the ground. Logan did this. The words bounced inside my skull. I looked around. The hammer lay broken in half. The steel wall scratched deep. Every detail in the room was telling the truth. I just didn't want to listen. I stepped onto the porch, looking down the stone path leading toward the city. The sunlight had softened. Above, a child's kite still floated against the sky, defying the death that had just passed through my home. I took a long breath. The initial shock faded, leaving a cold, metallic stillness inside my chest. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just spoke to myself. voice low and dry. From now on, everything about him goes in the book. Not the accounting book, not the book of father and son, but the ledger of justice, where every moral debt would be recorded with evidence, date, and truth. I closed the garage door. The last light of day reflected off the steel, catching my trembling figure still standing straight. A father who had lost faith and found resolve. From that moment on, silence was no longer patience. It was the beginning of judgment. Boulder Community Health, Foothills Hospital, Emergency Department, late at night. The sterile smell and white light drained all color from the room. Dr. Riley Shaw, mid-40s, alert eyes, and a voice that never rose above necessity, drew the curtain closed behind me. Mrs. Dana, 71, is past the immediate danger, he said, scanning the monitor. Severe dehydration, heat exhaustion, electrolyte imbalance. We've infused 3 liters, correcting potassium and magnesium. No internal bleeding, only soft tissue swelling on the forehead and left shoulder, likely from a fall. She'll sleep deeply tonight. We'll reassess neurological function in the morning, but I expect good recovery. My hand still clutched the phone. The screen glowed, showing messages I hadn't been wary enough to doubt. I remembered that morning after leaving home, receiving a text from Dana. Honey, our son needs you. Help him. He's trying, but you don't see it. I'd been at a rest stop off I-25. Coffee still hot on the lid. I read the line, sighed, thinking she was softening again. I only replied, I need time to think. About 3 hours later, another message came. I can see he's struggling. He just wants to be acknowledged. Don't be too rigid. If possible, send him a little money so the project doesn't collapse. You're still the one who decides, but don't let our son lose hope. I remember glancing through the windshield. White sunlight, no trace of doubt. Every word sounded exactly like her. Simple, emotional, flawless. I believed it. That afternoon I called back. The phone rang 3 times, then cut off. A text arrived immediately. I'm driving through the mountain curves, can't talk now. Let's speak later. I nodded to myself and set the phone down. I didn't know that while I was putting it away, Dana was already locked in a furnace-hot garage, and the person texting me was Logan. Even now, I can't understand how I didn't see it. Maybe because I wanted to believe. Because between work, our grown children, and the long fatigue of years, I still believed my wife would always choose peace over conflict and want to help our son. Elsewhere, at that same time, Logan and Natalie were waiting for a response. When no money came, they grew restless. Natalie spoke quietly. He won't believe it. Maybe we should let her out, Logan. I'm scared. Logan slammed the phone on the table, shaking his head, his voice hard but trembling. It's fine. It's cool in there, sealed, with lights. Mom's just staying for a couple of days, nothing bad. When Dad rereads her texts, thinks about what she said, he'll understand and send the money. Natalie fell silent. She didn't dare speak further, but something in her eyes cracked. They believed it, that locking up a mother was temporary, that it was just a way to make the father understand. Neither of them realized that the garage wasn't a test. It was a grave for a family. I never imagined it would go this far. I looked through the glass window. Dana lay still, IV lines in both arms, heartbeat steady, her skin pale but less gray. Gratitude rose in me, then faded, leaving a hollow calm. I nodded, voice rough. Thank you, Doctor. You should get some rest, Dr. Shaw added. Tomorrow we'll need your signature for transfer paperwork. I didn't go home. I needed to work, to do the one thing I'd never done wrong, record the truth, in order and with evidence. Leaving the hospital, I stopped by the house to get my old camera and handheld thermometer. 7:30 p.m. Boulder was 93 degrees Fahrenheit, the number glowing red on the gas station sign at the corner. Back at the driveway, I paused at the garage door, inhaling deeply like a diver before descending. Photo 1. Thermometer screen, 93 degrees Fahrenheit. Timestamp 1937. I shot a close-up, then a wide frame showing the door, for spatial reference. Photo 2. The long scratch on the metal door. A thin silver line, slanted like a signature written in panic. Photo 3. A faint blood smear on the edge of the workbench, where Dana must have fallen reaching for the window. I placed a ruler in the frame for scale. Photo 4. The keypad, digits 1, 3, 7, 9, worn shinier than the rest. I tilted the lens to catch the pattern of sweat residue. Photo 5. The dark corner behind the tool chest, where the acrid dryness of human waste still lingered. I didn't shoot close, just noted in my log. Hidden corner, floor rag tossed aside, fresh stains visible. I opened the garage door control app on my phone. The activity log appeared clearly. Wednesday, 7:17 p.m. Inner door locked. 7:34 p.m. Main door closed. No further activity until this afternoon. I captured the screen, saved the exact timestamp, then uploaded everything to my cloud archive. I compiled the files into the main folder, Evidence AUG 2025, and the subfolder, Garage Boulder Gears Photos. Old habits persisted, everything in order. I numbered each photo chronologically with short, plain captions. I knew that when I handed it to the police, they'd understand instantly. I wouldn't need to say a word. I sat down at the dining table, opened my laptop, and typed the title. Incident Report. Rescue and Initial Evidence. Philip Ward. The report had 4 sections. 1. The time I arrived home. 2. The process of opening the door. I mistyped the code once. 3. Dana's condition. Her breathing, the smell, the heat inside the garage. 4. The emergency call and the names of the 2 paramedics who responded. I wrote every small detail, the hiss of the lock, the sensation of lifting the cold water bottle to my trembling lips. And at the end, I wrote 4 words. Logan did this. I wrote like an accountant balancing a ledger, line by line, timestamp by timestamp. Nothing added, nothing omitted. Boulder Police Department, Family and Domestic Crimes Unit. The hallway lights flickered, casting a cold white glow. Detective Karen Morales met me at the reception. Small build, brisk steps, calm voice. I've reviewed the 911 and hospital reports, she said, extending her hand. Please come to the interview room. Just for information, not interrogation. Would you like us to record this? I would, I said, and I've prepared a written report. She placed a small recorder on the table and pressed the record button. I read the entire statement aloud, handing over a USB drive containing photos, the garage door system log, and the list of medical witnesses. Morales read through each page, jotting notes, occasionally asking, "Have you changed the garage code in the last 10 years?" "No. My son, Logan, has known it since high school." "Do your neighbors have security cameras?" "Yes, the Johnsons across the street." "Does anyone else know the code?" "Only 3 people. Myself, Dana, and Logan. My daughter-in-law, Natalie, doesn't." She closed the file. "I'd like to visit your house now. We'll collect fingerprints and check the neighbors' footage." At the garage, Morales wore gloves and unpacked her camera kit. The flash strobed repeatedly. "Wide shots first, then details," she instructed her colleague, then turned to me. "Please stay outside while we work." She brushed black powder across the keypad. Small circular prints emerged. "There'll be several," she said. "Yours, your wife's, and likely Logan's. We'll match them." She bent toward the scratch on the metal door. This was dragged hard, straight, continuous, not accidental. At the workbench edge where dry blood stained the grain, she used a cotton swab to collect a sample, sealing it in a labeled bag. "I'll be frank, in cases of confinement under heat. Like this, the prosecutor's office pays very close attention." We then went to the Johnsons. Tom Johnson opened the door the moment he heard my name. He'd seen the ambulance earlier that day. Morales showed her badge, explained briefly, and asked to view the footage. On Tom's phone screen, the recording played 7:17 p.m., Logan crossing the street, wearing a cap and gray shirt, entering my house. 7:34, he exited, shut the door, got into his silver SUV, and drove off. The image was clear. The license plate reflected the streetlight, fully legible. Morales requested a copy of the original file. Tom transferred it, and she noted, Johnson camera. Wednesday, entry 717, exit 734. Back at my house, Morales stacked the evidence neatly on the table. Photographs, fingerprints, blood samples, door log data, camera footage, my written statement, and Dana's hospital records. She looked up. Mr. Ward, I need to ask for the record. Do you wish to file a criminal complaint against Logan Ward? I looked out the window. The pine hills were turning violet. My voice was calm. I just want the law to do its work. I'll provide everything I know. Morales nodded. Let me be clear. With what we have, images, physical traces, electronic data, the victim's condition, and your statement, it's enough for a judge to issue a temporary arrest warrant. If Logan doesn't cooperate, that order will be approved very soon. She tapped her pen lightly, then met my eyes. You're not a vengeful father, Mr. Ward. You're a witness to the truth. Your job is to preserve the scene. Ours is to act. I nodded. In my mind, the ledger of justice opened to a new page. 1917, he entered. 1934, he left. Outside, the night wind moved through the pines, carrying the scent of soil and warm asphalt. For the first time since I opened that door, the air felt cool again, not because the weather had changed, but because order was returning. Somewhere in the hospital, Dana slept deeply, and in this house the truth had begun to right itself, and I knew it would not stop. That night, I came home from the hospital. Everything in the kitchen was exactly as before, the dishes, the wooden chairs, but the air felt as heavy as concrete. I opened the drawer, took out my old yellow leather accounting book, the one I used whenever something needed to be calculated seriously. On a new page, I wrote one word, consequences. Below it, I drew 3 columns and labeled them, criminal civil estate. Then I whispered, begin. The next morning, I drove to my lawyer's office in downtown Denver. Richard Stone was known for his firmness. Every word clipped and clear. I told him everything, the garage, the camera, the hospital. When I finished, he took a marker and divided a whiteboard into 3 columns. Criminal, coordinate with Boulder Police and the District Attorney's Office to add evidence, submit testimony, and request prosecution for unlawful confinement. Civil, prepare a civil lawsuit demanding $200,000 for physical and emotional damages. Estate, update the will and trust to protect Dana's assets. When we reached the will, I stated clearly, all assets belong to Dana. As for Logan, he would receive $1 symbolic with a disinheritance clause. If he dared contest, he would lose even that dollar. Stone nodded. You're doing the right thing, he said. This isn't revenge, it's restoration of order. I then hired a private investigator, Tanner Cole, to examine Logan and Natalie's finances. 2 days later, Tanner sent his report. Total debt, $78,000. Credit score, 540, poor. 2 peer-to-peer transfers from Logan's account to one labeled Starter Kit AVC at the same time Dana was locked up. The Alpine Vital Collective contract was a fake pyramid scheme with no real revenue. I looked over the figures and said simply, send everything to Attorney Stone and Detective Morales. That afternoon, I returned to the hospital. Dana was awake, an IV still in her arm. I held her hand and placed the new will on the bedside table. What are you doing, Philip? She asked. I answered, I'm doing what the legal system is supposed to do, just faster. That night, I opened the yellow ledger again. Under the 3 columns, I listed the steps. Criminal, submit statement and evidence. Deadline 72 hours. Civil, draft complaint, preserve telecom data. Deadline 48 hours. Estate, notarize will, transfer house into trust. Deadline 30 days. At the bottom, I pressed the pen so hard it tore the paper and wrote, "Justice isn't noise, it's reconciliation of accounts." Outside the ICU hallway, Dana's heart monitor lights blinked steadily. Inside my head, every timeline was now in place, like the bridge's span finally aligned to its center. From this moment on, the numbers would speak for me. The following Wednesday morning, the first message I received was from Detective Morales. "Mr. Ward, the arrest warrant has been signed. Execution at 8:15. Just 7 words, yet I understood their weight. The wheel of justice had begun to turn, and nothing could stop it now. At 8:30, Boulder police arrived at Logan's rented apartment. He had just stepped outside when they ordered him to halt. One officer read the warrant aloud, stating 2 charges. Unlawful imprisonment, under Section 183303, and elder abuse under Section 186.5103 of Colorado law. When the cuffs clicked shut, Logan only managed to ask, "Who called the police?" The officer replied simply, "Your father." He went silent. No resistance, no glance around. Bail was set at $50,000. That afternoon, Natalie called me, her voice trembling. "Dad, please, help him." I answered with one steady sentence. "You should speak with a lawyer. He's no longer a family matter." Then I hung up. That evening, social media exploded. A post spread rapidly with a photo of Logan being led away. "Cold-hearted father sends his own son to jail." The words cut slowly, but I didn't feel pain. Attorney Richard Stone immediately responded with a formal notice citing Colorado Revised Statutes 1325-130, demanding removal and cessation of defamation. By nightfall, the post vanished. 3 days later, another message arrived. Logan's landlord had issued a non-renewal of lease notice, 17 days to vacate. Morales told me over the phone, "They're avoiding legal trouble. The property company doesn't want a record tied to a criminal case." I said only, "I understand." That night, I sat alone in my study and opened the Denver Post. The arrest story appeared on page 3. 34-year-old man arrested for confining mother in sweltering garage for 3 days. Below it, a subheading read, "Sources confirm the victim is the wife of retired aerospace engineer Philip Ward." I read every line, not a single one missed. Setting the paper down, I poured a glass of water and looked out the window. The Colorado autumn sky was crystal clear. Golden leaves shimmered on the distant hill under the sunlight. I thought I would cry, but I didn't. Only one sound echoed in my mind, the resonance of truth. Slow, cold, steady, like the metallic click of the garage door closing that day. I felt no joy, no hatred, only one simple understanding. Every action is accounted for. And today, the page titled "Consequences" in my ledger had its first number. Monday morning, sunlight flooded the Boulder County Court. Golden beams streamed through tall glass panes, spilling across the cool gray stone floor. The courtroom was unusually crowded. Local reporters, law students, even a few neighbors who had heard the ambulance that night. Everyone whispered until Judge Regina Caldwell entered, and silence finally settled. Judge Caldwell, about 50, streaks of silver at her temples, spoke in a voice both gentle and firm. "Preliminary hearing in the case of the state of Colorado versus Logan Ward is now in session. Prosecution, you may proceed." Assistant District Attorney Rachel Torres stepped to the podium, setting down her laptop and a thick folder. Her voice was clear, low, and stripped of emotion. "Your Honor, the prosecution presents evidence establishing unlawful confinement and endangerment of an elderly person." The projector illuminated the wall, photographs of the scratched garage door, a temperature reading of 93 degrees Fahrenheit, faint blood smears, and UC Health's medical report listing severe dehydration, electrolyte imbalance. Then came the video. The neighbor's camera showed 1917 hours. Logan crossing the street, opening his parents' garage. 1934. He exited, shut the door, the license plate gleaming in the light. No one in the room moved. Logan sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit, collar creased, eyes fixed on the floor. Natalie sat beside him, hands clasped so tightly her fingers trembled, nails pressing into her skin. She couldn't look at him. The prosecutor continued. These are the text messages sent from the victim's phone during her confinement. Forensic results confirm the IP originated from the defendant's device. The defense attorney rose. Your Honor, we do not dispute that the defendant locked the garage door, but he never intended harm. This was a rash act, an emotional attempt to draw his father's attention to an investment project, not to inflict injury. He believed the garage had ventilation and that his mother would be safe for a few hours. The courtroom murmured. Rachel Torres responded calmly. A lack of intent to kill does not erase guilt for endangering life. The projector clicked off. The silence felt like that of an abandoned church. Judge Caldwell turned the pages slowly, her eyes deliberate. Finally she spoke, her tone decisive. The court finds sufficient grounds to bind this case for trial. The hearing is set for September 15th. She looked directly at Logan. Unless the defendant pleads guilty, there will be no continuance. The gavel struck once, sharp and cold. As the court recessed, attorney Richard Stone approached me. He was the quintessential Denver traditionalist. Charcoal suit, deep blue tie, a quiet voice that carved through the air. I just received confirmation from the civil clerk, he said. Your lawsuit, Ward vs. Ward, was served at 9:34 this morning. Logan and Natalie have both signed for it. I nodded. The civil complaint that Stone had spent 2 weeks drafting contained 3 sections. 1. Demand for $200,000 in medical and emotional damages. 2. Petition for a permanent restraining order protecting Dinah. 3. Clause of legal disinheritance, leaving Logan $1 symbolic in the will. Stone added 2 tracks, criminal and civil, moving in sync. 1 for the court's justice, 1 for the families. Both legitimate. I didn't answer, only looked through the window. Outside, the afternoon sun slanted over Boulder's red rooftops like a layer of bronze. Inside me there was no triumph, only the stillness that comes when a ledger finally balances. In the courtroom, Logan hunched over, his attorney whispering in his ear. Natalie sat motionless, a pale statue on the verge of collapse. They seemed smaller, not by distance, but because for the first time, truth stood upright while they bowed. As we stepped out of the courthouse, Stone said something I will never forget. Mr. Ward, this isn't family business anymore. This is the accounting system of justice. And today the debts start being written down. The evening wind swept through the courthouse yard, rustling the service receipt in his hand. I watched it flutter away, and in Boulder's dry breeze I heard 2 sounds intertwined, one of law, one of morality. Together they formed what I now call dual justice, both public and personal. And in that moment, I knew. The final balance sheet had begun. 3 weeks after the hearing, private investigator Tanner Cole sent me an email titled, simply, Ward Update, Financial and Housing Status. I opened it. The numbers spoke for themselves. Logan had been terminated from his job immediately after the indictment. The internal record listed violation of professional ethics, a gentle phrase for a scar that never fades. 6 rental applications for him and Natalie were denied, due to a pending criminal record. His credit score had dropped to below 540. His bank balance showed exactly $812. Cole added one brief note, as if afraid I might miss the point. They're currently staying at a motel off Highway 36, room 214, paying daily. I didn't reply. I simply closed the computer and wrote in my ledger, September 10th. Consequences begin to take shape. That night, in that same motel room, Natalie threw her bag onto the floor, her voice breaking, "You're weak, Logan. If you'd had a backbone, if you'd talked to him like a man, we'd have money, a house. We wouldn't be in this filthy place." Logan sat on the bed, hair hanging over his face, hands on his head. "You think I wanted this? I just wanted him to listen, to believe the project had a future." "Project?" Natalie laughed bitterly. "Your project was locking your mother in a garage in the middle of summer?" Their shouting echoed through the thin walls. The couple next door in room 215 heard every word, recorded the argument, and sent it to the manager. An hour later, the local police knocked. No arrests, just a report marked domestic disturbance. After that, Logan stopped speaking to Natalie. She moved out 2 days later, leaving a note on the table. "I can't stand watching you fail." Friday night, I was in my study when the phone rang. A Boulder area code. I answered. Logan's voice was hoarse and shattered. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just wanted you to see me, just once." I paused, then said quietly, as if reading an equation, "You're not dying from poverty, Logan. You're dying from a lack of morality." On the other end came ragged breathing, the sound of wind slapping against a motel window, a TV weather report somewhere down the hall. Then the line went dead. No goodbye. That night, I opened the ledger titled Consequences and added the third entry. September 13th. Lost job, lost home, lost trust. Outside, Boulder's hills lay still under fog. There was no victory, no satisfaction, only the heavy silence of a father watching his son destroy himself piece by piece. I had once believed justice was the sound of a judge's gavel. That night, I learned that true justice sometimes echoes only after every excuse has died away. And in that silence, a father learns the bitterest lesson of all. Not every wound needs a bandage. Some simply need time and truth to bleed until they heal on their own. 2 months later, autumn settled over Boulder. Golden leaves blanketed the courthouse steps, and the wind carried the scent of pine and damp earth. That day, the court heard 2 cases, civil and criminal. Morning, the civil case. The smaller courtroom held only the attorneys and a court clerk. Attorney Richard Stone placed a folder titled Settlement Agreement, Ward vs. Ward, on the desk. He read each line clearly. The defendant, Logan Ward, agrees to pay $7,500 in compensation, along with a public written apology to be published in the Boulder Daily Camera for 7 consecutive days. The defendant also accepts a disinheritance clause, relinquishing any future claim to the Ward family estate or trust. When he signed, Logan said nothing. His hand trembled, the ink feathering across the paper. Dana sat beside me, eyes downcast, lips pressed together. Stone handed the clerk a printed draft of the apology. "I, Logan Ward, take full responsibility for my actions. I did not intend harm, but the consequences I caused to my mother, Mrs. Dana Ward, and my father, Mr. Philip Ward, are undeniable. I offer this public apology and accept all legal consequences." The room was utterly still. When the clerk reread the closing lines, I didn't look at Logan. Only the soft sounds of a pen scratching and pages turning filled the space. Beside me, Dana shed a single tear. Not one of forgiveness, but the tear of a mother watching the wreckage of her family, formalized into ink and paper. Afternoon, the criminal case. The larger courtroom was full. The air stretched tight like a string, pulled too far. Judge Regina Caldwell sat again at the bench, stern yet not cold. She spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "The defendant, Logan Ward, has entered a plea of no contest, neither disputing nor denying the charges. The court hereby sentences him to 3 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, and a permanent restraining order protecting the victim, Mrs. Dana Ward." She paused, meeting his eyes. "If you violate any term of this order, even once, I guarantee you will be in custody, and I will be the one signing that order." The courtroom fell silent. Only the rapid scratching of the clerk's pen filled the space. I rose to leave. As I walked past, Logan lifted his head. 3 seconds. Our eyes met. No hatred, no plea. Only a hollow stillness where truth had replaced all emotion. Then I walked on without turning back. On the courthouse steps, the wind gusted hard, swirling the leaves around my feet. Stone approached quietly and said, "So it's written, Mr. Ward, Justice, recorded not in anger, but in procedure." I nodded, glancing at the black text on the printed verdict. Probation, 3 years. Community service, 300 hours. Permanent injunction, granted. There was nothing more to say. Justice, at last, had taken shape, not as a gavel's echo or a tear's weight, but as a precise, balanced system where every distortion must return to its rightful place. I walked away. Along the stone path, the afternoon shadows stretched long, and I knew this was the second peak of the story, where justice revealed itself and silence became the final verdict. 2 months after the trial, autumn descended on the Rocky Mountains. The road leading back to my home in Boulder blazed with the red of maple leaves. Sunlight slanted through the pines, gilding everything with the dust of time. The air was cool, carrying the resin of trees and the scent of damp soil, the smell of closure, recognizable only to those who have lived long in the mountains. The driveway was thinly carpeted with leaves. I swept a few times, then looked at the old garage door. That door had once been both the beginning and the end of tragedy, now silent as if nothing had ever happened. I walked up to the keypad and pressed 3 new digits. 315. 3 days, 15 hours, the time Dana survived in darkness. I changed the code not out of fear, but to turn that number into a reminder. Survival itself is a form of justice. As evening fell, I set dinner on the porch, a bottle of red wine, 2 plates of salad, and the carrot soup Dana had just made. Above, the mountain peaks still glowed with the reflection of snow. We sat across from each other, not saying much. The wind brushed through the wooden fence, soft as the house's own sigh. Dana looked at me and smiled. "Do you hear the wind? There's no more sound of locks." I nodded, raising my glass, my voice rough. "Yes, the last door is finally open." After dinner, I went into my study. On the desk lay a silver USB drive containing everything: the case files, crime scene photos, time logs, reports, verdicts, and settlement receipts. I labeled it in black marker. Evidence, AUG Toyota 25. Balanced, closed. Then I placed it in the safe and turned the dial. The click was small but final, like an accountant closing a ledger after reconciling the last number. Sitting down, I wrote the final lines in the old yellow notebook. Every number has 2 sides, debit and credit. So does justice. It is not punishment. It is the balance between wrongdoing and truth. I looked out the window. Dana was watering the lavender by the porch, the flowers she had once planned to plant the day the nightmare began. The sunset light caught her hair, turning it gold like thread. I whispered, almost to myself, "Justice is just accounting for what people hide." The wind carried the scent of pine and the chill of the range. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and left the room in the dim glow of dusk. I knew the final balance sheet was locked. No more debts, no more credits, only peace, the sole profit left to those who walked through tragedy with their souls intact. I once thought justice was the sound of a gavel. Now I know it is merely a quiet balance between right and wrong, reason and emotion, father and son. I didn't win against anyone. I just recorded what happened, like an old accountant closing the books after a long year. People forget, but the ledger doesn't. Every wrong entry, sooner or later, must return to its rightful column. 3 days, 15 hours, a sequence I will never forget, because it proves that morality, once locked away, can still be opened by truth. If you've ever been betrayed, ever stayed silent when you should have shouted, leave a single dot in the comments so I'll know you too understand that justice doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be written down. And if you believe, as I do, that every mistake leaves a trace, and every truth, no matter how buried, will one day balance itself, subscribe to the channel, because I'll keep telling stories where those once called weak turn out to be the keepers of justice's ledger,